Hey everybody, Kevin here, and this video is going to be kind of a for beginners kind of learning about different terms you're going to hear if you're just starting out in this van life or RV life, or you're thinking about doing it. And today we're going to talk about boondocking. What is boondocking at its simplest? Okay, so we can assume the term boondocking comes from the word boondocks, and the word boondocks, special guest, is
out in the middle of nowhere, because when I was little, I grew up and we always called it, we lived back in the boondocks because we were in the middle of nowhere with nobody around. For a kid, that's pretty bad. And now that I'm grown, that's all I want to do is find someplace out in the middle of nowhere.
So I assume that's where the term boondocking came from, was people referring to boondocks. I grew up in a holler, but when I'm out in a canyon somewhere, I don't call it hollering. Never mind. So its simplest form is boondocking is going out camping. You know, if you're in your van, if you're in an RV, and people think about RVs and being in an RV park or a state park or a national park, and you have all these hookups and you have water and septic, and of course you have electricity. And if you're in a private campground, you probably have a little thing to run in and you have television cable, and you have all of these niceties, all the luxuries of home. Boondocking is pretty much doing without them. It is, simplest form, camping without any hookups. Now, you have people that stop and spend the night in a Walmart parking lot. You have people that in the West go and try to find some public government land that you're allowed to camp on for free. It's that, and it's everything else in between. Some people try to do stealth camping and park in random places in cities. Maybe they still work and they're trying to live in their van and do it more inexpensively than living in an expensive apartment in some of these cities. But any of this kind of, I guess, falls into boondocking, even though generally when you hear it and you see that term and you see those pictures, it's, you know, somebody in an RV sitting off and there's no other RVs around, and they have the nice backdrop of, you know, someplace in Utah or someplace in Arizona or a nice beach somewhere. And that basically is what it is. Now, as far as finding those places, it is certainly much easier in this age of technology than it was decades ago. And I'll be honest, until 3 or 4 years ago when I first got into this stuff, I didn't know this term. I had never really done this stuff. I really had no interest in doing this stuff. I didn't know a lot of this free government land to camp on even existed because I was from the East. If I saw signs for things traveling, I didn't really know what they were or what they meant. And it just wasn't what I was trying to do. Now, the way it turned around for me is I went on a long trip. We went on a long trip in a car, spending nights in hotels. Decided at that point it was going to be my trip of a lifetime, that we were just going to go for a month and see if the world would fall apart without us. And it didn't. Life went on without us. Most people didn't even realize we were gone. And we took a tent, so when we got into the more pricey places, we could go pitch a tent rather than pay for a really expensive hotel room in order to keep our costs down. And not knowing what we were doing, we went places. We paid $35 in some places just to pitch a tent. I think out near Mount Rushmore, and just some really silly stuff because we didn't know any better. You know, we hit a few campgrounds, and out of those 30 some days, I can't remember now, I think we spent 8 or 9 nights in tents. And I don't think we ever spent less than $20 to pitch a tent on that trip. It's just because we didn't know what we were doing, and we'd never experienced that before. And yes, you can get to my age and not know these things.
Boy, did we learn a lot.
We did learn a lot. We learned that you could spend a whole lot of money. And granted, it was enjoyable. And like I said, it was a trip of a lifetime. And even being on a budget, you know, in a car that got good gas mileage, we weren't spending that much in gas, even though it was a long trip. You know, not eating out all the time, you know, not eating out 3 meals a day and that kind of thing, and trying to keep it down. But we still spent a lot of money. And to be perfectly blunt, I had a budget when we left on that trip of $5,000 to be gone a month, and we pretty much hit it. I think we went slightly over it, but we were in that range, about $5,100 and gone 33 days, whatever it worked out to. And my budget kind of in my head was about $150 a day for gas, food, and entrance fees on a few places we wanted to get into, you know, when we found something we wanted to do, you know, assuming that most places we could find a little cheap $50 a night hotel. And that got shot off too, because once we got out west in places where there were fewer hotels, the prices went up. So even in non-touristy stuff, it ended up being $70, $80 a night. And like I said, what we spent on tent camping, that was absolutely stupid also. And to be perfectly honest, you know, I would go by places and we would see things, you know, I didn't know that you could camp in a national forest for, you know, $8 a night. I just didn't know these things. I'd never done these things. I had always, all the traveling I had done before involved cars and planes and hotels in cities and such. So it was a new thing for me to learn. So short version, coming back from that trip, I thought, man, I really enjoyed this and I would like to do more of this. I would like to do this every year. I would like to do this several times a year, because I'm fed up and I feel like I've already worked a lifetime and I want to go enjoy some things and see some things before I'm not able to. So the thought process was, if I could get those costs down, I could stay out on the road longer. And that's where I started getting into vans and learning how to explore, so I could be out and not spend $5,000 a month. And last little trip I took to Kentucky, running around that state, I don't remember, it was 12, 13 days, whatever it was. I spent absolutely zero in camping fees on that trip. No hotels, no campgrounds, and of course that brought the cost of that almost 2 weeks being on that trip down really, really inexpensively. So that's where boondocking comes from. Now, there are people that swear they go out and they live in their whatever and they're out there for a year and they have never spent a penny on camping. God bless them, because I'm not that desperate. And I don't ever want to be that desperate. Or I like the challenge of seeing how long I can do it. You know, I think we went 11 days or something, you know, out west before we ended up in Vegas and decided to get a room one night. And then we probably didn't pay for camping again for another 10 days or whatever, because we had everything we needed and the ability to take showers and such. But that, at its essence, is what boondocking is camping without hookups, either free or really, really inexpensively. And for us, it's about being able to spend the same amount of money and stay gone for a much longer period of time. So hopefully that explained things a little bit to you. If you're new to this channel has to do with traveling and saving money and finding interesting places. Also has to do with the 2 different vans we use for traveling at different times, how we found those, what we fixed on those, what you need to fix on vans before you take off on a trip, or an RV before you take off on a trip. So a lot of good things. If you go down in the description, you'll see links to other videos we've done, and we'll see you soon.